So welcome everybody. I'm Christina Olson. I'm Acting Director of Institute Sustainability here at BCIT. Before we get started, I would just like to acknowledge that our BCIT campuses are located on the unceded Indigenous land belonging to the Coast Salish peoples, including the territories of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations. We are offering this Lunch and Learn as a part of Waste Reduction Week. Waste Reduction Week in Canada, as it says right there on the bottom left of your screen. And as a part of this week, I believe it's the 20th anniversary actually of Waste Reduction Week. Each day has a different theme. So we timed this presentation to take place on Plastics Day. So happy Plastics Day, or happy Anti-Plastics Day, which is more apt. We'll have 45 minutes for this presentation. If you have any questions along the way, please type them into the chat. And if you want to ask them with your actual voice, just save them to the end and we'll have some Q&A then. We'll send the link of the presentation after, and any other resources that you might find interesting, we'll send those along after. And without further ado, I will pass it over to Kaide, who is with our sustainability team, and she will take us through the presentation. Over to you, Kaide.
Awesome. Thank you so much for opening it up, Christina. So hi, my name is Kaide. I'm going to be leading you through the session today. And once again, thank you so much for joining us today and choosing to spend your lunch break here with us today. So I'm just going to go right ahead. So just to run through what we'll be going through, we'll start with the life cycle of plastic and its impact. Then we'll move on to what we can do to properly recycle and reduce waste. Then a bit of Q&A time, and last but not least, raffle time. So I hope you stick around for that because there's pretty awesome prizes. So the 4 stages of the plastic life cycle consist of extraction, production, consumption, and disposal. So let's walk through each one of them. But first, I'm going to throw a question at everyone. Do you know what plastics are made of? Now, Christine is going to throw out a poll for you to answer. So if you could just quickly jot in your answer, that would be wonderful. Okay, I'm seeing varied answers. I'll give 5 more seconds. Maybe another 5 more. Yeah, I think everyone answered. So I'm going to end the poll. Share results. So I think you can see the results on your screen. So I see that a good chunk of you have an idea, but not 100% certain. A few of you are certain, and a few of you have absolutely no idea. And that's totally normal. So let's move on to the answer. So plastics are made of fossil fuels. So for those of you who didn't know the certain answer, here it is. And if you didn't know at all, it's totally fine. I didn't know until last year either. It's not exactly common public knowledge. So since plastics are made of fossil fuels, the very first stages of plastic production is the extraction of oil and refining. The chemicals that are derived from the byproducts of fossil fuel extraction, which are ethane and propane, become the 2 main ingredients of plastic. And then moving on to the production stage. So the ethane and propane that we just extracted is then put under a process called cracking, which applies heat and breaks down the molecule bonds of ethane and propane, which then becomes ethylene and propylene, which goes through even more processing. And it finally becomes polyethylene and polypropylene, the 2 most common types of plastics. This is then used to make various different types of plastic products. So that was like a very high level rundown of how it's made and what it's made from. Now, can anyone guess why I'm throwing out this image of a sick patient after talking about plastic production? Feel free to unmute yourself or throw your answer in the chat. Yep, medical waste, that's one for sure. Yes. Yep, that's all. These are all things that came up during my research. Yes. Thank you all for the contribution. So the high level reason of why I threw this out here is because, cancer is one of the negative impacts of plastics on the human body, and everything that you guys have just mentioned right now are definitely contributors, and I'm just going to add another factor to why it can lead to negative health effects like cancer. So all of the stages within the extraction and production stage of plastics has emission impacts. And by emission impacts, I mean that the process releases different substances into the atmosphere and our air. So first of all, these processes are highly energy intensive to operate, so it releases a significant amount of carbon dioxide into the air, contributing to climate change. But the second part of this is that each stage also releases toxic substances into the air that can cause cancer and other negative health effects on us. So let's go through an example together. St. James Parish in Louisiana, USA is a district nicknamed Cancer Alley because it's a community with a very high concentration of oil refineries and chemical plants, all of which causes significant impact on the health of the local citizens. It's a predominantly Black, low-income community, and many of them live close in proximity to some form of refinery or chemical plant. They're known for having America's highest community cancer rates, to the point that their risk of getting cancer at St. James Parish is 50 times higher than the national average. And these numbers sound more real when you hear that almost every household has someone fighting or dying from cancer. So now that we've learned a bit about what it takes to create plastics and the negative impacts of it, let's move on to the next stage of the life cycle, which is consumption. So, as you can probably tell when you just look around your surroundings, plastics have become indispensable in our lives. The image you see here represents where and how much plastic we use globally, roughly speaking, and you can see here at the bottom that almost 40% of it is in packaging. But when we think about how we only use packaging, like single-use plastics, for only 10 to 20 minutes of its working life, it really doesn't make any sense. And just think about how long we use our plastic coffee cups before we finish our coffee, like not very long. So if we use so much plastics, the question that we're left with is, where do all of these plastics go after it's used? Well, on a global scale, this is what happens to our plastics. Though these numbers will vary depending on the country's recycling capacities, on average, only 14% of it gets recycled, and the rest are either burnt, sent to the landfill, or ends up in the environment. The recycling rate is low because recycling is a complex, time and money-consuming process, and the sheer amount of plastic waste we produce is far beyond the capacity of our current recycling system. Mostly only the high-value and easy-to-process plastics are recycled domestically. And just to give you an overview, these are the plastics that have a higher chance of getting recycled. So starting from the left, we have the beverage bottles that you see often. So they're called the PET or #1 plastics. These are the easiest to recycle because they're made of fewer ingredients and they're high in demand, which is why you can get a refund for it at recycling depots. Next in the middle here is the HDPE or the #2 plastics, which are the dense plastic containers you see with laundry detergents, milk jugs, oil jugs, etc. These guys have a somewhat high chance of getting recycled. And then on the far right here is the PP or #5 plastics, which are usually seen with takeout containers, plastic drink cups, yogurt containers, etc. Though these guys are becoming more recyclable, the probability is lower compared to number 1 and number 2. Now, I've only introduced 3 types here, but there are 7 types of plastics in total. And everything else other than the first 3 that I introduced are lower grade plastics made with various mixed ingredients, which makes it harder to break down, separate by ingredient, and recycle. So they're usually either not recycled at all, or they require separate technologies or equipment, which a lot of commercial facilities are not equipped with. But they are all marked with the running arrow recycling symbol, which is why it's often mistaken that it is recyclable. But unfortunately, the symbol doesn't guarantee that it will be recycled. So then the next question is, where do all of these low-grade plastics go if very few of it gets recycled? The answer is they are exported to countries in the global south, lately often in Southeast Asia. So images like this you may have seen on the internet. These countries are the receiving end of these plastic waste, are importing an overwhelming amount of plastic waste, far beyond the capacity of what properly regulated recycling facilities can handle, which results in unlicensed, unregulated factories proliferating in the poor neighborhoods. And this is because the factory owners want to capture every value out of the pile of waste for plastic scraps that they can recycle for money. But the problem with these unlicensed factories is that they illegally dump waste and wastewater into the local neighborhoods, they burn waste, all of which has serious health effects on the locals. Now, once every last bit of recyclable material is sifted out by factories and local waste pickers, the remaining plastic waste is mostly left to be burnt. But the incineration of plastic results in direct emission of toxic pollutants such as dioxins and heavy metals, and exposure to these pollutants, and especially if you're so close to it, can pose serious health issues such as reproductive and developmental problems, immune system disorders, cancer, the list goes on. And even after the burning, a high concentration of these toxic substances remain in the ashes, which reaches the surrounding environment like the water, soil, plants, and animals. And these facilities also dump toxic wastewater into their waterways, contaminating their local drinking water. Now, a story of a local woman from a village in Thailand, whose home is located 100 meters from a small recycling plant, says that the acidic smell that comes from the incineration is unavoidable. It makes her vomit, and she's losing weight every month. The drinking water from her well is contaminated with heavy metals like zinc, iron, and lead. Her yard and alleyways are filled with what used to be a part of modern life, from broken Roombas, radios, snack wrappers, children's toys, the list goes on. So now I think we can agree that the current way we produce, use, and dispose plastics is a problem. We also know that problems as big as this is not going to be fixed overnight, but there are small changes that we can start making in our daily lives to make positive impact. So let's start with some small behavioral changes we can start making today here at BCIT and at home. Now, I'm going to start off with a short waste audit clip featuring Phil, our lovely head custodian, and he's going to highlight how we're doing on recycling here at BCIT. So give me a moment to switch screens. All right.
Hello, my name is Filippo De Luca. I'm the supervisor for recycling and custodian services here at BCIT, and I'm here to introduce our recycling program to you. We got a sample bag here that we took out of our NE1 cafeteria recycling blue bin. And I'm gonna go through it so we can show you what was properly recycled and where it should be recycled. So we're going to start off with refundables.
So just to give you context, refundables refer to recyclable beverage containers that can be returned to recycling depots for some money. So like water and pop bottles, beverage cans, and you can find refundable bins all over campus. They look like any of these. So this one, for example, you'll find outside the campus quite often. And this blue bar over here on the side is specifically so that you can place your beverage cans and bottles for a separate collection. And they're collected separately because they become an important source of income for the Student Association. And here's another one. This one also can be found all over campus. But do keep in mind that this barrel looking one will be replaced soon with something slightly different, but that'll also be dedicated specifically to refundables.
For example, we have a refundable pop can here. This should be put into the refundable bin, not our blue recyclable bin. We have another pop can, Monster drink, same thing. These are refundables and they should be going into the refundable bin. We also have Tetra packs. These are going to our waste bin. We also have coffee cups. They're paper, they're slightly waxed, and these could go into our blue recycling bin. We have the lids to the coffee cup. They can also go into our blue recycling bin. We have another bottle of refundables. They could go into our refundable bin, not the blue recyclable bin. Another coffee cup, same thing. These are paper, they have a little bit of wax. As long as they're empty out of the liquid, they can be put into our recyclable, blue recyclable bins. We have an instant noodle cup, plastic, number 3. These can be put into our blue recycling bin. A lid, plastic, number 3. They could be put in our recycling bin, the blue one. We also have a package from a lock. They have a number 3 on it too. These can be put into our blue recycling bin. Then we go to food waste. We have our food packaging from the cafeteria. They have some paper towel in there, and of course a wooden fork. This all could be put into our composting bin, green bin. Here's an instant noodle cup. Paper, cardboard, slightly waxed. These can be put into our blue recycling bin. The lid to the instant noodle, plastic. This is garbage, waste. We have a dish, a bowl. This is paper and wax. This could be put into our blue recycling bin. 2 more coffee cups, caps, number 3s. These can be put into the blue recycling bin. We have another container here of food. As you can tell, all food, but it does have a piece of plastic, a piece of metal. This could be put into the blue recycling. This could go into our green composting bin. After going through our blue recycling bin, these are we separated, as you can see here. These were properly recycled. This and this wasn't. These are obviously refundables, and these are for composting.
So just to interrupt here, as you can see, only a fraction of the contents in this recycling bin was correctly sorted, and the rest were contaminants, meaning they should belong in other categories.
And this is what came out as garbage. So now we're going to go through one of our landfill bags, and we're going to go point out what could have been diverted into the recycling stream. We start off again with food waste, with fries. this could have easily gone into our green composting bin. We have a bag of chips, empty. This was properly put into the waste, black waste stream. Another bag of chips, same thing. It was properly into the land black bin. We have another instant bowl dish. This could have been recycled under the recyclable blue bins. We have a coffee cup. Remove the lid. Liquid is empty. This could have gone into our blue recycling stream. And of course we have a plastic drink with fluids in it. The fluids should have been empty, and this could have been recycled into our blue recycling. After going through our landfill bag, this is what we separated out of there. We have our plastics, which are for our blue recyclables. They can be all recycled. These are our food waste. These could have gone into the green food scrap bins, and this was properly put into the landfill waste.
Now, again, only the small pile on the right was correctly put in the landfill bin, and the rest could have been either recycled or composted.
Thank you for taking your time to seeing this video. I hope it was very educational for you. And as a friendly reminder, you are the recycler, not us.
So a big thank you to Phil for volunteering his time to film this for us. That was extremely helpful. Now, to wrap up this section, this was only a tiny fraction of the trash we generate daily here on campus. So just think about how many bags like this exist throughout and how little of it was properly sorted. So just considering this and the sheer amount of waste, the first priority that we have is to reduce waste. Now going back to my screen. So there are many ways to reduce everyday use of plastic. Specifically in the context of BCIT, I would say that one of the most easiest and tangible method is to bring your own coffee mug. Most of us do end up buying drinks on campus, which is why drink cups are one of the most common trash found in our bins. More and more cafes on campus are willing to take reusable mugs again, and down the road, I'm sure they'll probably resume their cup discounts, so it's worth giving it a shot for sure. Another one is packing your own lunch to reduce takeout container waste. If you buy your lunch on campus often, you could try making an effort to pack your own lunch in reusable containers without plastic wraps or Ziplocs, maybe just once a week to start. And another easy one that you can start doing at home is to build the habit of carrying around reusable grocery bags. The minimum charge for grocery checkout bags is going to be 25 cents starting January, so you might as well start now to save money later. Now, the point that I really want to get across is that I know that there are tons of messages out there in the world encouraging you to do all these things, but it can get very overwhelming. So just don't think about doing it perfectly. Start with something small and just maybe stick to that one thing to start with, and do what you think is sustainable for yourself. You don't have to do everything that I've mentioned right now if it's too much for you. Just what really matters is that you build up your comfort level and doing these and changing your behaviors. So I mentioned that only a fraction of plastics are recycled and that waste reduction is priority, but I still do really want to urge the importance of recycling and sorting properly, because when items are disposed in the wrong stream, it contaminates that pile of recyclables. So when this happens, the recyclables often get sent to the landfill or incinerator because it's just too resource consuming to take the extra steps and filter the contaminants out. So in a nutshell, yes, it's true that not all plastics get recycled, but by us not properly sorting, it only lowers the percentage even more. And it's also worth noting that when I say that only a small percentage gets recycled, it's not necessarily because our waste haulers are choosing not to. but more because the global recycling market is a very complex web of networks, and there's almost no way for the haulers and sorters to know where their mixed plastic waste ends up, as it gets absorbed by different brokers and middlemen and different layers of them. Now moving on. So at BCIT, we recently re-examined our recycling bin signages to see how we can improve our waste diversion and contamination rate. On the right here, the big one, is a sample image of our new signage designs for the outside bins. These used to be illustrations like you see on the old ones here, but we replaced them with real images for improved understanding. And these outside signs will be the first changes that you'll see in the coming months, but there are plans to also switch these old signages that you'll find indoors with new ones as well. So you'll slowly see the changes throughout campus for improved understanding. Now, another thing that we noticed is are some common mistakes that were made when people have to choose which categories to throw their trash in. Now, I'll introduce some of the main misconceptions that we noticed. The first one is that compostable plastics actually aren't compostable. Well, technically they are, but they require a very, very specific condition, like temperature, moisture level, etc., to break down, which most commercial composting facilities today aren't equipped for. So, but they also can't be recycled either because with other plastics, because they're made of natural ingredients, whereas the other plastics are made of fossil fuels. They're completely different. So you can't just mix them and recycle them together. So what happens is that they'll end up in the landfill anyways. Now, there's quite a bit to know about this. So if you would like to find out more, I think Christine can throw in the link here to find out more, and I'll also be emailing out links and resources later. And the second misconception is that soft plastics belong in a separate recycling bin. As much as we all want to believe that recycling is as easy as throwing all plastics in one bin, but it sadly isn't. So soft plastics like chip bags, plastic bags, Ziplocs, and a bunch of other packaging or wrappers are collected separately because A, it's harder to recycle, and B, when it's mixed with other recyclables, it gets caught in the machines during the process and becomes a huge problem. And that's what you see on this image here on the left. At BCIT, you can't throw soft plastics into the blue bin, but they are collected in separate bins at certain locations on campus. Christine can also throw in a link to all the locations as well. And also just an FYI that similarly with most curbside recycling programs at home, you won't be able to throw the soft plastics in your blue bin, but at every municipality, there's a recycling depot or like eco center where you can drop off all of your soft plastics, styrofoams, etc. for recycling. It just requires an extra step to collect it at home and then drive it over, but it's worth it. And then one last note about recycling at BCIT. The BCIT Student Association launched a cigarette butt recycling program in partnership with TerraCycle. So you'll find these black recycling or butt collection poles all over campus. I believe there's around 50 of them. And what happens is once they're collected, they're shipped in boxes to TerraCycle's recycling facility in Ontario, which the Student Association receives $1 a box for. And then they take that and donate it to a Canadian nonprofit. So now that we've talked a bit about recycling, I wanted to quickly test our knowledge and explore what we talked about through this recycling mini simulator game. Let me switch screens. So this is a recycling mini game that I found that was organized by different municipalities in Vancouver. And I wanted to see if we can all participate or through the chat or off mute and determine where this leftover pizza goes. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, thank you. Aluminum foil. Yes, Alicia got it. Aluminum foil, and it goes in the blue bin because aluminum foil is the same as aluminum cans, so like pop cans. So for the same reason, they belong in the container thing. And fruits, leftovers, green, yes. Thank you. Broken glass. Yes, yes. We have some very smart people here. Juice box. Yes. Blue bin, plastic cup. Awesome. So that was, I think that level was particularly easy. One thing that I want to throw out there that may or may not confuse people is where soiled pizza boxes belong and non-soiled pizza boxes belong. So how many of you know where soiled or basically used pizza boxes belong? Yes, yes, compost. And clean ones belong in paper. And this is a common mistake as well. We often see pizza boxes used in the recycling or paper bin because it's paper, but it can't because it's soiled and you can't recycle paper that has pizza sauce all over it. So a lot of these are details that you do have to pay attention to. And also it's important to note that oftentimes, generally speaking, what can and cannot be recycled and composted are generally speaking the same across municipalities and facilities, but there are always going to be different details that vary depending on where you're at. So you're going to have to check, it's really important that you pay attention to the signages at BCIT because they're going to be slightly different from your house and your municipal recycling program. So you also want to check the details for that too. And these small details really start mattering when it comes to like the proper sorting and recycling. Okay, going back to my slides. I am now going to pass it on to my colleague Maria, who is going to talk about sustainable development goals and how that relates to what we're talking about today.
Thanks, Kaidi. That was super, super insightful. Hi, everyone. My name is Maria. I have been working with the Sustainability Office, analyzing the ways that we at BCIT are addressing the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So before moving on to the Q&A section of today, we just wanted to tie in some of the information you've heard so far with these Sustainable Development Goals. So hopefully you guys have seen this set of icons before. For those of you who have not, these are the Sustainable Development Goals. They're often referred to as the SDGs, and they were brought forth by the United Nations to be achieved by the year 2030. So as you can see, there are 17 of them, and collectively they represent a universal call to action to end poverty, to protect the planet, and improve the lives and prospects of everyone everywhere by the year 2030. And so these goals range from striving to achieve affordable and clean energy, to building peaceful and just institutions, all the way to tackling gender equality and world hunger. Next slide, please. And so among these goals, one particular one stands out when we discuss today's topic. So SDG 12 stands for Achieving Responsible Consumption and Production Patterns. It highlights the need for resource efficiency and building sustainable lifestyles that are in harmony with nature. It highlights the importance of reducing impacts of harmful chemicals and adopting sustainable procurement policies. And it also includes the push for more green jobs that promote local cultures and local experiences and local products. And of course, as we learned today, it also tackles waste management. And next slide, please. And so as we saw today, one of the ways we at BCIT are working towards the Sustainable Development Goal is our approaches to waste, including the bins that you saw for landfill, recycling, organics that are being scattered across campus. And we also conduct campus-wide waste audits every few years to identify the amount of total waste collected and the amount of waste that was diverted. And so looking at a diversion rate. We see SDG 12 shine through in applied research. So through research that is conducted on the recycling of materials or natural resources, as well as consumer habits when it comes to sustainability and building those sustainable lifestyles that we just talked about. In academics, there's a wide variety of programs that discuss today's topic. Some examples include courses in the Diploma in Forest and Natural Areas Management or the Advanced Diploma in Sustainable Business Leadership, and those represent just a few short examples. And lastly, this is one of my favorites because I believe it's one that's not so widely known, but BCIT recently made the switch to sugar sheets for roughly 85% of its paper purchasing. And so sugar sheets are manufactured using the waste fiber generated from sugarcane processing and use no wood, unlike most paper products. This leaves them with a lower greenhouse gas footprint throughout their product life cycle than many of the traditional wood-based paper products. Next slide, please. And so when it comes to Sustainable Development Goals, no action is too small or too little. There is always something that can be done at every level in government, organizations, and as individuals. As individuals, we hope that you can take some of the lessons from today and apply them in your everyday lives and spread the word about plastics and how working to minimize our waste and properly sorting our waste can help the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goal. And lastly, to tie things in together, our team has been working on highlighting various SDGs at BCIT and how we are addressing them. And so we have launched a page specifically focused on SDG 12 that covers more in depth some of the information, the examples that you just heard, and we'll put the link in the chat for those who are interested in learning more. And with that, thanks for everybody for listening, and back to you, Katie.
Thank you, Maria. So that is officially a wrap to the presentation. Now I think I would like to address some questions that's been thrown in the chat. Let's see. And feel free to speak up if you have a question as well. So one of the questions that I see here, is there any BCIT poster indicating correct sorting for students and staff? I believe that means like a promotional poster encouraging recycling. No, but that's a really good idea. So far, we've been really focused on renewing the signages. So I don't think we've had talks on having posters specifically for that. So thank you, Anna. And Wendy, I checked a little while ago, the stands weren't accepting reusable mugs. Yes, that is the case with some cafes. I have noticed that when I ask nicely, and particularly the Rick's Cafe, they are accepting it. Like basically all they do is like they just get me to put the mug on their counter and then they just pour the drink directly so that they don't have to touch it. That's an alternative method that a lot of cafes are using. So I just ask anyways. And the Rick's, I think there's a pretty good chance that they take it anyway. So if you're interested, then Rick's is the way to go. And plastic straws can go into the blue bin. No, plastic straws unfortunately go in the landfill bin. And another question from Wendy, does facilities go through each bin on campus to make sure it's properly sorted? I can't say for sure, but I don't imagine that they can go through each bin to properly sort it afterwards. So what likely happens is that if there's contamination, then that might just go straight to the hauler, because again, it's a lot of work to sort through them. Do we have enough time? Yep. One more. Does Vancouver have the capacity to recycle brown and black plastics? I understand some recycling facilities don't have appropriate sensors to detect dark materials. Yes. Again, that'll depend on the municipality. so far we have not been informed from our hauler that they don't accept black plastics. That might be the case for a particular municipality. So again, this is a case where you have to be really careful with what each municipality or facility accepts.